The Cipher Brief, because national security is everyone's business.
At every SIG Summit, we have a wildcard guest, someone we invite to challenge us to consider what we're missing when it comes to both cyber and technology. Suzanne spoke just a few days ago with technologist and author of Click Here to Kill Everyone. So Bruce Schneier about what worries him the most. He couldn't be with us live, but he wanted to share the details of what's keeping him awake at night and why. Here's a hint. It's hackers, but not the kind you may be thinking of. Here's Bruce in the conversation with Suzanne last week.
So in case you don't have enough to worry about, I want to talk about AI hackers. Not hacking AI, but AI as hackers. I think artificial intelligence will hack humanity unlike anything that's come before. I think they'll find vulnerabilities in all sorts of systems, not just computer, but social, economic, and political systems, and exploit them at an unprecedented speed, scale, and scope. This will culminate in AI hacking AI with humans being a little more than collateral damage. Okay, maybe this is a bit of hyperbole, but none of it requires far future science fiction technology. I'm not postulating any singularity. I'm not assuming intelligent androids. I'm not even assuming evil intent on the part of anyone. Most of the hacks I will discuss don't even require major research breakthroughs in AI. They'll improve as AI gets better, and we can see hints of them in operation today. And they'll come naturally as AIs become more advanced at learning, understanding, and problem solving. All right, so let's generalize the term hacking. The tax code isn't computer code, but it's still code. It's a series of algorithms, right? Those are the tax rules. And it has vulnerabilities. We call them loopholes. It has exploits. We call them tax avoidance strategies. And there are black hats. We call them tax accountants and tax attorneys. And so a hack, I want to define as something that a system permits, but is unanticipated and unwanted by the designers. Or here's another definition. A clever, unintended exploitation of a system, which one subverts the rules of the system to at the expense of another part of that system. So this is a subjective term, encompasses notion of novelty and cleverness. It's a subversion or it's an exploitation. It's unintended, unanticipated. Hacks follow the rules of a system, but subvert its goals or intent. Now, all systems and rules can be hacked. You can find hacks in professional sports, consumer reward programs, financial systems, politics. A curved hockey stick is a hack. Airline mileage runs are a hack. The filibuster was originally a hack from Roman times. Hedge funds, private equity, they're full of hacks. Right? Even the best thought out sets of rules will be incomplete or inconsistent. They'll have ambiguities. And as long as there are people who want to subvert the goals of the system, there will be hacks. So AIs are becoming hackers. 2016, DARPA held an AI capture the flag event at DEF CON. You know the game. 100 teams competed, 7 finalists, and for 10 hours, the AIs hacked the other team's computers and defended their own. And an AI called Mayhem won. AIs are also finding vulnerabilities in software. They're not very good at it. The research is ongoing, but it's promising and they'll get better. And the implications, I think, go far beyond computer networks to vulnerabilities in the tax code, vulnerabilities in financial regulations, vulnerabilities in all sorts of social, economic, and political systems. And there are 2 different issues at stake here. The first is that an AI might be constructed to hack one of these systems. Right? Someone might feed an AI the world's tax codes or the world's financial regulations with the intent of it creating a slew of profitable hacks. The other is that an AI might naturally, albeit inadvertently, hack a system. Both are dangerous, but the second is more dangerous because we might not know it happened. And this is because of the explainability problem. So in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, a race of hyper-intelligent pan-dimensional beings build the world's most powerful computer, or the universe's most powerful computer, Deep Thought, to answer the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. The answer was 42. But Deep Thought was unable to explain its answer or even what the question was. That's the explainability problem. Modern AI systems are essentially black boxes. Data goes in one end and an answer comes out the other. And it can be impossible to understand how the system reaches a conclusion, even if you're a programmer and look at the code. Right? AIs don't solve problems like humans do. Their limitations are different than ours. They'll consider more possible solutions than we might. More importantly, they'll look at more types of solutions. They'll go down paths that we simply haven't considered because they're more complex than things we think about. 2016, the AI program Alphago won a 5-game match against one of the world's best Go players. This actually shocked both the AI and the Go playing worlds. And AlphaGo's most famous move was Move 37, Game 2. It's hard to explain without delving deep into Go strategy, but it was a move that no human would have ever chosen to make. 2015, there's a research group fed an AI medical system data from about 700,000 people and tested whether or not it could predict diseases. It was a success, but deep patient provides no explanation for the basis of a diagnosis. Doctor either trust or ignore the computer. Now, researchers are working on explainable AI, and there are advances in the field, but there seems to be a trade-off between capability and explainability. Explanations are a cognitive shorthand used by humans, suited for humans. And AI is becoming actually more opaque and less explainable. All right, now let's talk about reward hacking. AIs don't solve problems in the same way that people do. They invariably stumble on solutions that we humans might have never anticipated. And some of those will subvert the intent of the system. And that's because AIs don't think of it in terms of implications, context, norms, and values, the stuff we humans take for granted. So this is reward hacking. It involves achieving a goal, but in a way the AI designers neither wanted nor intended. And the examples are pretty great. There's a soccer simulation where an AI figured out that if it kicked the ball out of bounds, the goalie would have to throw the ball in and leave the goal undefended. There was a stacking simulation where an AI learned to flip a rock upside down rather than stack it. There's an evolution simulation where an AI figured out that instead of running or getting better legs, it can make itself tall enough to cross a finish line by falling over it. And so these are all hacks. You can blame them on poorly specified goals or rewards, and you'd be correct. You could point out that they all occur in simulated environments, and you'd be correct. But the problem is more general. AIs will inadvertently hack systems in ways we won't expect. There's a story of a researcher trying to teach a robot vacuum cleaner not to bump into things. And instead of learning not to bump into things, they learn to drive backwards. There are no sensors back there. Right? Any good AI system will naturally find hacks. So we all learned about the story of this problem as children, with the King Midas story. So after the god Dionysus grants him a wish, Midas asks that everything he touches turn to gold. And he ends up starving and miserable when his food, drink, and daughter all turn to gold.
Hello?
It's a specification problem. Midas programmed the wrong goal into the system. We also know that genies are very precise about the wording of wishes, and they can be maliciously pedantic when granting them. But here's the thing. There's no way to outsmart the genie. Whatever you wish for, you will always be able to grant it in a way that you wish he hadn't. The genie will always be able to hack your wish. The basic problem is that in human language and thought, goals and desires are always underspecified. We never describe all the options. We never include all the caveats, the exceptions, and provisos. We can't. Any goal will necessarily be incomplete. And this is largely okay in human interactions because we understand context. We act in good faith. If I asked you to get me some coffee, you'd probably go to the nearest coffee pot and pour me a cup, or walk to the corner coffee shop and buy one. You wouldn't bring me a pound of raw beans. You wouldn't buy me a coffee plantation. You wouldn't look for the closest person holding a cup of coffee and rip it out of their hands. I wouldn't have to specify any of that. You would just know. If I asked you to develop a technology that would turn things gold on touch, you wouldn't build it so it starved the person using it. I wouldn't have to specify that. You would just know. AIs don't just know. So 2015, Volkswagen was caught cheating on emission control tests. This is not an AI story. Human engineers programmed a regular computer to cheat, but illustrates the problem nicely. They programmed their engine to detect emission control testing and to behave differently when being tested. And their cheat remained undetected for years because you can't figure out what a software is doing. But if I ask you to design a car's engine control software to maximize engine performance while passing emission control tests, you wouldn't design the software to cheat without understanding that you were cheating. This isn't true for an AI. It'll think out of the box because it has no conception of the box. It won't understand that the Volkswagen solution harms others or breaks the intent of commission control tests. Right? Unless the programmers specify the goal of not behaving differently when being tested, an AI might come up with the same hack. Programmers are satisfied, accountants are ecstatic, and because of the explainability problem, no one will realize what the AI did. And yes, now that we know the Volkswagen story, we can explicitly set the goal to avoid that particular hack. But there are other hacks the programmers will not anticipate. The lesson of the genie is that there will always be hacks the programmers won't anticipate. Right? And this is not the obvious attacks we're worried about. The greatest worry is the non-obvious ones, whose effects are subtle, like the Volkswagen story. So nothing I'm saying here is news to AI researchers, and many are currently considering ways to defend against goal and reward hacking. We can try to teach AI's context. It's called value alignment. And that's hard, no time soon. So how realistic is anything I've said so far? Now, it kind of depends. The feasibility of any AI hacking depends on the system being modeled. Right? For an AI to even start optimizing the problem, let alone hacking a solution, all the rules of the environment need to be formalized. Goals need to be established, and you need some kind of feedback loop. So sometimes this is a trivial matter. Right? For Go, it's easy. And this is actually why most of the current examples of goal and reward hacking come from simulated environments. What matters is the ambiguity of this system. You can imagine feeding the world's tax laws into an AI because the tax code consists of formulas. But there's still ambiguity that'll be hard to translate. Most human systems are even more ambiguous. It's hard to imagine an AI coming up with a real-world sports hack like curving a hockey stick. Like the AI has to understand not just the rules of the game, but the physiology of the players, the aerodynamics of the stick and puck, and so on. And this ambiguity ends up being a near-time security defense against AI hacking. Probably the first place to look for AI hacking is in financial systems, since those rules are designed to be algorithmically tractable. But here's the thing about AI. Advances are discontinuous and counterintuitive. We don't know when the revolutions occur until after the fact. So while a world filled with AI hackers is still science fiction, it's not stupid science fiction. And we need to think about the implications now. So hacking is inherently human. Changed when everything became computers. Right? Hacking computers is a thing, but it's still been a human activity because searching for new hacks requires expertise, creativity, time, and luck. When AI start doing the hacking, everything changes again because they won't be constrained in the same ways as people. They'll change hacking's speed, scale, and scope. Speed is easy. Computers are faster than people. A human creative process that might take months or years can be compressed to days, hours, or seconds. And what happens when you feed an AI the entire US tax code? How many loopholes will it find? Dozens, hundreds, thousands? We have no idea. And it's not just speed, but scale. Because once they discover these hacks, they'll be able to exploit them at a scale we're not even ready for. And you can probably see some shadows of this with AI-generated text and the way spam bots are sort of taking over discourse. And the increasing scope also makes hacks more dangerous. AIs are already making important decisions that affect our lives. When they start doing hacking, the scope increases enormously. And as AIs get more capable, society is going to cede more and more important decisions against them. And a lot of these hacks will be perpetrated by the powerful against us. And while we have societal systems that deal with hacks, they were developed when hacks were human. They reflect the place of human hackers. We don't have any ability that can deal with hundreds, let alone thousands of newly discovered tax loopholes. Okay, last thing, talk a bit about defense. So when AIs are able to discover new software vulnerabilities, like vulnerabilities in code, this will be a boon to hackers everywhere. Right? They'll be able to hack everything. They'll put us all at risk. But this same technology will be useful for defense. Right? Imagine a software company employing vulnerability finding AI on its own code, identifying and patching all vulnerabilities in his product before releasing them. He could build this into the compiler. It can happen automatically, right? Software vulnerabilities could be a thing of the past. Right, the transition period is dangerous. New code is secure, but legacy code is vulnerable. But over the long run, an AI vulnerability finding technology favors the defense. Same is true for hacking broader social systems. Sure, an AI can find hundreds of vulnerabilities in the tax code, but its same AI could be used to evaluate potential vulnerabilities in any proposed tax law or tax ruling. And that is valuable for the defense. Now, also, the defense needs some kind of resilient governing structures that can quickly and effectively respond to hacks. It's not going to do any good if it takes years to update the tax code. But I think this is a hard problem in modern governance beyond the scope of this talk. And really the overarching solution is people, right? People that understand both tech and governance. But this is something we all need to start thinking about now before we have AIs coming online and hacking our world. So thanks for listening.
Bruce, thank you. There's a lot here to unpack and think about.
Totally a lot here, I get it.
The overarching issue, though, you just said in those last statements, I kept thinking as you were talking about solution, what's the solution? Is there a technical one? You say the overarching solution is the people. So there's no technical way that's going to help prepare.
There isn't. I don't think so. I mean, if an AI finds 100 vulnerabilities in the tax law and people start using them, and the tax revenue in the United States drops by 1/3, that's not a tech problem. That's a society problem.
Yeah.
Right? AI start hacking, I don't know, the market. The same way high frequency trading changes the dynamics. And suddenly normal investors are shut out of any profit. That's not there are tech solutions, but it's going to be a policy implementation of it. So this is something I'm actually writing a book on. The manuscript submitted early June, and it'll be out in January. So I'm kind of excited about this right now. And I think there's a lot to think about here in how system hacking by the rich and powerful will change when computers start doing the creative work.
I'm curious, Bruce, is there a chapter in your new book that's coming out that regards to national security and the fact that sometimes U.S. adversaries on a national security front don't follow the same rules when it comes to creating and building AI and uses of AI, having humans in the loops and things like that? Do you address that all in your book?
Yeah, I don't. Honestly, my problem is not that Russia's going to do this. My problem is Goldman Sachs. Mm-hmm. Right? My problem is U.S. corporations. Mm-hmm. And this is not going to be AI built for everybody. This is going to be AI built for the rich and powerful already. This is going to be AI that will not subvert the power dynamic, but keep it going. Now, I'm not writing about AI. I'm not writing about hacking AI. I'm writing about AIs doing the human act of vulnerability exploit finding. Very different thing.
All right, that was Bruce Schneier. Those of you who have known and worked with Bruce over the years know that he is really someone who pushes the boundaries of what we think we know. And we're also here at the SIG really focusing in the future on technology. So we really appreciate his thoughts on that. If you haven't already read his book, it's on the bookshelf behind me. Click here to kill everybody. He also has clearly a talent for writing headlines that get people to click. So we really appreciate some of that insight there from Bruce Schneier.